The Epstein case is so big, it is hiding the roots that enabled it to grow. This case has to prioritize justice, even when the legal authorities that should have done so many years ago deliberately failed their responsibilities. This is Two in a Mic.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro e Two under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye Two under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji e Two under mic. Wala wachokre wabed piny bi wawinje ero chako momit ndi Two and a mic podcast makende.
The Epstein horror did not fall out of the sky. It didn't just drop onto an island with dozens of seriously high-profile people and hundreds of underage girls and victims all miraculously present. Epstein's island, his services or his operation, his wealth, his popularity and connections, all grew from somewhere, some small point where it all began. At some stage he was a small operator or businessman. At some very early stage he began targeting people who would allow him access to ever-increasing circles of importance and wealth and influence. Any normal investigation would go backwards and work its way through those processes. What were the stages of development? Working the timeline and following the money trail. Where did the first transactions come from? Who introduced Epstein to whom? Where did he travel? How did he promote himself? Who were his key players? Who were his benefactors? If, as is suspected, this was a deliberate operation from the start, then it grew bit by bit under the noses of some of the biggest security agencies in the world. If it was a non-espionage party service, then as soon as high-profile players got involved, an assessment would have been made, and it would have drawn investigative attention. Epstein was found guilty in 2008 and was given his few months in prison instead of the mandatory minimum. This varies based on the crime, but it can be of 15 years or life. This leniency and change from federal crime to state crime, and the associated change in consequences, have raised serious questions as to the judgment of Alexander Acosta, a person who 9 years later became a member of Trump's government. Many powerful people have been involved as far back as 2008, so the only way no proper investigation had been carried out could only have been due to complete and absolute incompetence by the heads of every agency running security and law enforcement in the USA. That is a long line of innocent and hard-to-believe mistakes option. The other and more likely options are that the authorities did in fact know what was happening all along for different reasons. They were perhaps gathering compromise themselves, or they were watching which agencies were, or they had been told by very senior people to stay away, which suggests those senior people were aware, and over a period that crossed a number of presidencies and both parties. Enough senior people had to have known full well what was happening to be able to keep an investigation off the books. Epstein apparently became first known to the FBI in 1996 when he stole photos of children and threatened to distribute them, as well as explicit images of minors. The FBI did not open an investigation into these allegations. The accuser, Maria Farmer, was at the time employed by Epstein. She also alleged that she was raped by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell in his Ohio residence. Many years later, in 2009, Epstein's Black Book of Clients emerged when his butler tried to sell it. The FBI got hold of it, portions were published in 2015. Millions of documents have been gathered, and in all, more than 1,000 victims of Epstein have been identified. The authorities declared that their mission was to combat child exploitation and provide justice to the victims, but that, and I quote, perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those needs, stated an FBI memo. Yet between 2009 and 2019, Epstein was at liberty. A civil case brought by Virginia Giuffre began in 2015, yet in 2017, Acosta was chosen to serve in Trump's government. There is a lot that is fishy about the deal Acosta made with Epstein, and much of that suspicion is borne out through the documented interactions that followed. This was a deal that violated the rights of the victims they had known of at the time, and it was deliberate. It was planned precisely to deny the victims justice. That a person so high up in the justice system could have so little respect and understanding of the word justice, let alone the purposes of his job, is simply disgusting. For that person to then be rewarded by the president for these failures beggars belief. From everything I have ever read or seen in documentaries and books, I make the following assumptions. Security services are more than curious. They are ultra suspicious because that is how they're trained to be. They are suspicious and then they analyze. They investigate and they pass on information, and they are given assessment results from especially trained analysts. Data is gathered, and the more complicated a situation becomes, the more agent hours are clocked. If there are situations that emerge where a number of high-profile characters frequent a certain venue or make use of a certain organization's services, then at some point a determination is made. It can be decided that the investigation is cancelled because the agency has been informed it's safe by senior figures. It can be that the investigation is cancelled because another agency is believed to be present. When government budgets are so tight, two separate agencies would not conduct separate investigations. In either case, it would suggest that people up the chain were aware of what was happening. This doesn't simply include domestic threat assessment agencies, though. At different points, different sources of intel must have started coming together. Foreign dignitaries becoming involved, whether agents or significant players in social circles or nobility and royals, would have drawn the attentions of a non-domestic based security apparatus. We know a former British royal was involved, and there are allegations of a former Israeli Prime Minister beating and raping a young woman who had been told to accept it by Epstein. We are therefore in no doubt that this was an international operation. Whether it was business, espionage, politics, or all three and more, remains to be seen. But will we see the truth? And will the truth we are told ever be the whole truth? I, for one, find it staggering that so few nations' politicians have spoken out about it. I am therefore led to suspect that a great number of other foreign figures may well also have been involved. I am reminded of the phone tapping scandal that broke a few years ago. The German Chancellor Mrs. Merkel's phone was found to have been bugged by Washington. It was hugely embarrassing for President Obama. Germany is a huge ally and NATO partner. So why on earth would the USA spy on its own partners? The media went mad. Articles took up a lot of space on front pages and about everywhere else. The German government was silent. Mrs. Merkel didn't really say much. I was a little surprised and uncertain as to why Obama wasn't being publicly admonished. Not too long after, we found out that the German secret services had bugged an entire host of their own allies themselves. They had spied on influential people to understand what their policies or strategies to specific situations would be. Doing so allowed German interests to come up with their own responses and not be surprised by the strategies of their business partners. The German government didn't complain about Obama's government because they knew they were doing the same. It all blew over pretty soon. A German spy station was closed, and the operation was apparently ceased. Yet the precedence of muted response was established. We know why it could have been politically expedient to cause furore, but a greater secret was holding that response back. As we have no doubt realized by now, the official lines can be complete lies. And that goes beyond spies among friendly nations. We have more recent examples. We have had footage of people being murdered by ICE agents. We have had footage of those murders from multiple angles, and yet the White House has come out and blatantly lied. We have seen investigations conducted that only follow government policy and not that follow where crimes have been committed. We know that law enforcement is highly politicized in the US. It is only a crime if people of a certain political persuasion commit it, just as it is usually only a crime if people with less than a certain amount of money in their accounts are at fault, or if they don't have the right connections or influential friends, or if they are the right gender, or if they have the right shade of skin, or if they pray in the right kind of institution. Let's not be all high and mighty. This doesn't just happen in the USA. It happens in Europe too. The press are particularly involved. This is why so many media groups are owned by political supporters, mainly right-wing, and conservative political backers. We have seen with our own eyes what is happening around the world. We have seen genocides unfold, and rather than cooperate with international law, governments like the USA and Russia have sanctioned international court judges. They have frozen their accounts and sentenced them to imprisonment in absentia. Trump sanctioned the kidnapping of dictator Maduro from Venezuela. Trump wants to claim Greenland for the USA. These are serious breaches of international law, and nowhere near enough has been said on these issues. Many leaders around the world should be facing trial in the ICJ for complicity in genocide, but they are not. Instead, our leaders continue to trade with countries where dictators and criminals rule, like Aliyev in Azerbaijan, even though there are corruption proceedings taking place in Germany for bribery of members of parliament. This follows the laundromat case in the UK involving billions. Our governments will deal with dictators that are directly responsible for ethnic cleansing, see Karabakh and how all indigenous Armenian people were illegally deported by Aliyev, abuses of human rights and suppressing the press in his own country, and supporting the genocide in Gaza too. Our governments know all of this. They know who is doing what and with whom, why they are doing it. They know how these activities are being conducted. Our governments are fully aware of all of the connections between these activities, the desired outcomes, the strategies and the crimes, and the only thing that our governments care about is how they can benefit. If anyone remembers the Profumo scandal back in the 1960s, then they might ask themselves what was learned from that event, and by whom. Harold Macmillan's government was brought down because the British people lost all faith in the integrity of the British establishment. That was because of one minister having an affair with a 19-year-old, Christine Keeler, who also had relations with Soviet spy Yevgeny Ivanov. Did the Profumo scandal lead to an upgraded operation that could draw in greater numbers of politicians and powerful business people? Is that what eventually led to the Epstein Island project? Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was a wealthy media tycoon who himself had suspected associations with international security agencies. He died in 1991 of a suspected heart attack and accidental drowning after he went missing from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. I bring these different events and characters together because there are connections. Some of those connections are direct and obvious. Some of them are simply indications of established methodologies. Some show us the true character of politics and how grotesque politics can be when a few people want to pursue a specific and selfish agenda. We have seen throughout history, to be sure, but take the last few years as clear evidence how depraved the political establishment is and how closely it connects the enrichment of its enablers and benefactors to the successful continuation of its corrupt and underhanded policies at home and abroad. It has become something of a theme in recent years to beg you, each and every one of you, to think objectively, to open your mind to objective and critical analysis, and to truly listen to and observe what politicians are saying and what the agents of political policies are doing. Regardless of our own political biases and persuasion, to assess the consequences of those actions and expressions to human dignity, human rights, and our understanding of democracy and justice, and based on all of that, decide what kind of people should be running our world. We cannot choose presidents of the planet, but we can elect leaders for our municipalities, our regions, our local authorities, and our countries. Those choices, as small as they may seem, will influence decisions further up the chain of political power. Our basic preferences can lead to significant change, or the continuation of the immense injustices we see today, and a total denial of the climate disaster that poses the biggest threat ever to the survival of humanity. The Epstein Files are not simply a US concern. This case speaks to how we value innocence. It questions our values, and it demands accountability of those society has charged to look after their interests and work to create a better future for us all. These same people are perpetuating chaos, war, and international crimes in our names, with our hard-earned taxes, and all the while benefiting themselves and their own. We simply cannot accept that a person who is tied up in a child sex ring can make decisions that impact the future of our world. A person who justifies genocide and ethnic cleansing in other parts of the world to suit his friends, and who we have no way of demanding justice from. How much is too much? What lines have to be crossed before we collectively decide that democracy needs to be more properly applied and not simply watered down or sacrificed for the benefit of such a small minority? This is Two and a Mic. Rise up and please be curious. Two and a mic. Two and a mic. Two and a mic.